Welcome to my podcast, Scientist Free from Religion. This podcast has as proposal, as main idea to talk about a scientific topic, but also talk about religion. Different from the common assumption in which science and religion should be separated, here on this podcast we recognize formally that science and religion are not disconnected. Sadly, religion can be a very big threat to science. So on this podcast, the proposal is to talk about it freely, so without fear, without the illusion that they are separate topics. So we are going to cover a possible topic. And most of them will be focused on the connection between religion and science, especially to defend science. That's our goal. Our goal here is to defend science from religion and to help to make science, to spread scientific thinking, especially to defend it against religion.
I want you to start off today by picturing a scenario.
Okay.
Imagine you are just walking down the street, right?
Yeah.
And you see a man kicking a dog.
Yeah.
Viscerally, immediately, you feel something. You feel this tightening in your chest. You feel anger. You think to yourself, that is wrong.
Right.
And not just I don't like that in the way you don't like anchovies on pizza, but more like that is incorrect, that it actually violates a rule of the universe.
It is a nearly universal human experience, that sense of objective revulsion.
Exactly. But here is the problem, and it is the problem that has kept philosophers, theologians, and frankly, drunk college students awake for thousands of years.
Yeah.
Can you prove it?
Right.
Can you prove that kicking the dog is wrong? In the exact same way you can prove that a rock dropped from your hand will fall to the ground? Or is that feeling just chemistry? Is it literally just your personal opinion masquerading as a fact?
You are touching on the single biggest tension in the history of human thought here. This is the battle between moral realism, which is the idea that moral facts are real, tangible things, and moral relativism, the idea that it is all just cultural preference.
And usually when we talk about this, the lines are drawn pretty clearly. The religious folks will say it is objective because God said so. And the scientific folks usually say, well, there is no God, so it is all just evolutionary biology and social contracts. We basically made it up.
That is the traditional battlefield, yeah. But the deep dive we are getting into today throws a massive hand grenade into that trench warfare.
It really does.
We are looking at a 2025 academic paper by the philosopher and historian Richard Carrier. And it has a title that honestly sounds like a challenge to a duel. It is called Objective Moral Facts Exist in All Possible Universes.
In all possible universes. That is a massive swing. He's not just talking about Earth, he is talking about the multiverse.
He is. Carrier is arguing that we have been looking at this all wrong. He claims that you don't need a God to have objective morality, but he also claims that morality isn't just an opinion.
Right.
He thinks he can prove logically, mathematically, that right and wrong are hard facts. Facts that would apply to aliens, facts that would apply in dimensions with entirely different physics, facts that are as inescapable as 2 + 2 = 4.
I have to admit, my skepticism meter was pegging when I first read that. It sounds like he is trying to have his cake and eat it too. Like he wants the absolute certainty of religion without having to rely on the religion part.
That is exactly what he is aiming for. He calls it a secular grounding for objective morality. And to get there, we are going to have to go on a pretty wild ride today.
Buckle up.
Yeah, we are going to deal with some heavy logic. We are going to talk about asexual jellyfish.
Which I am very excited for.
We are going to murder people in a hypothetical world where death doesn't exist. And we are going to use game theory to explain why being a genuinely nice person is actually just pure selfishness.
Selfishness. I thought we were talking about morality.
Well, according to Carrier, they might actually be the exact same thing.
Okay, that is a hook if I have ever heard one. Let us dive in. And I want to start exactly where the source starts, with what we can call the God problem. Because for most people, if you ask, why is murder wrong? They point up. They say, because the Creator said so.
Right. This is known as the grounding argument. You see this from critics Carrier cites in the paper, people like Linville, Copan, William Lane Craig. Their core argument is essentially that you cannot get an ought from an is.
The famous is-ought gap. David Hume's guillotine.
Precisely. Hume argued that you can look at the universe and see you see atoms, gravity, biology, but no matter how hard you look at a hydrogen atom, It will never tell you what you ought to do. It just is.
This exists.
Right. So the theist argument is that you need something outside the physical system, a god, to inject the ought, to issue a moral command.
Because without that commander, we are just biological accidents bumping into each other. If a lion eats a gazelle, it isn't evil. It is just lunch. So if a human kills a human, without God, isn't that just, I don't know, competitive lunch?
That is the fear, that without God, we are left staring into nihilism. But Carrier starts his paper by taking this weapon and turning it right back against the theists. He uses the Euthyphro dilemma.
Ah, Plato. We are going way back.
Way back. But Carrier updates it for a modern audience. The dilemma basically asks a simple, devastating question to anyone who thinks God is the source of good. Right. This is what we call divine command theory in its purest form. Good is just a synonym for God's will. But Carrier points out the logical trap here. If good just means what God wants, then the word good becomes a tautology. It becomes totally meaningless. You are just saying God does what God does.
It is like saying The Bachelor is the show that is The Bachelor. It doesn't actually tell me anything about the quality of the show.
Exactly, and it gets much darker. If option A is true, then morality is completely arbitrary. If God decided tomorrow that torturing babies was good, then by definition, torturing babies would instantly become the moral thing to do.
And the usual response I hear to that when talking to people is, but God wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
God is good.
But you see the circle there.
Yeah.
If you say God wouldn't do that because he is good, you are actively judging God against a standard. You are saying, there is a thing called goodness, which clearly involves not torturing babies, and I am happy to report that God meets this standard.
Which leads us directly into option B.
Exactly. Option B admits there is a standard outside of God, a yardstick of morality that even God has to measure up to. But if that is true,
then we don't need God to find the yardstick. The yardstick exists on its own.
Bingo. If option B is true, God isn't the source of morality. He is just the ultimate follower of it. He is the cosmic Boy Scout. He didn't write the moral handbook. He just memorized it perfectly.
Carrier brings up some pretty brutal examples in the text to hammer this point home. He explicitly mentions the Amalekites.
Yes. 1 Samuel 15 in the Bible. It is the command to go out and kill men, women, children, and infants.
It is a passage that makes everyone uncomfortable.
And Carrier asks a very pointed question. Why does it make you uncomfortable? If option A were true, if good is just whatever God says, then reading a command to kill infants should make you nod and say, ah, what a beautiful moral act.
But we don't. We cringe. We physically recoil.
The fact that we recoil proves that we have an independent moral compass. We are judging that ancient text. Even the theologians who try to explain it away, saying things like, oh, maybe the babies were evil, or, oh, maybe it was historically necessary, they are trying to justify the action against an external standard of justification. They're actually proving Carrier's point for him.
So the Euthyphro dilemma suggests that either morality is totally arbitrary, and God could theoretically be a monster, or morality is independent, and we don't actually need God to explain it.
Right.
But Carrier also tackles the human dignity argument, which I found really interesting. It is the idea that we have value specifically because we are made in God's image.
The imago Dei. It is a beautiful concept in theology. But Carrier asks a rather rude logical question. Why is being a copy of God inherently a good thing?
Well, presumably because God is great.
But how do you know? Imagine a cosmic tyrant, a being of pure malice, pure selfishness, who created us just to suffer for his amusement. We would still be made in his image. We would be little copies of a monster. Would that give us dignity?
No. It would just make us mini-monsters.
Exactly. To say being like God is good, you first have to establish that God is good. You need that independent yardstick again. Carrier calls this the cosmic tyrant rebuttal. Without an independent moral fact to judge God by, you literally cannot tell the difference between a God worthy of worship and a demon who is just very, very powerful.
So we are right back to the epistemic problem. We are stuck in a boat.
The epistemic boat. Carrier argues that atheists and theists are actually sitting in the exact same position. Both of them are looking at an is. The theist looks at the is of God. The atheist looks at the is of nature. And both of them have to figure out how to squeeze an ought out of it.
A Carrier thinks the atheist actually has the easier job here.
He does. Because the is of nature, logic, physics, biology is observable. We can test it. We all agree it is there. The is of God is hidden, highly debated, and unverified. So if Carrier can build a logical bridge from nature directly to morality, he wins. He doesn't need the extra unproven step of a deity.
Right, so he has cleared the deck. He has argued that religion doesn't actually solve the grounding problem. Now he has to step up and solve it himself. And he attempts this with what he calls a logical syllogism.
This is the core engine of the entire paper. 2 premises and a conclusion. In formal logic, if the premises are true, the conclusion absolutely must follow.
Hey there, thanks for being around. We are going to make a small break. I'm going to share with you my books. I have several books. So far, all my books about religion, atheism, which have been published a lot, they are in Portuguese, which is my main focus. But if you are interested, you can still buy my books to help me to support my work. I have several books. For example, one book that I'd like to recommend now is AI by Sci-Fi. AI by Sci-Fi is a book that talks about artificial intelligence, which is everyone is talking about artificial intelligence with ChatGPT, all this amazing stuff that they can do. They can talk, they can create video, they can create podcasts. This podcast, for example, there are several episodes that was recorded using artificial intelligence, which is amazing how I can do that. I can even interact as you could see in several episodes. So I would like to invite you to buy my book AI by Sci-Fi. It's available on Google Books, Google Play. It's also available on Amazon. So you can buy my book. If you are interested in something a little bit more complex, a little bit more technical, I do have as well technical book. For example, I have one book about computational thinking, in which I talk about Kasparov. It's a technical book. Greg Kasparov was the first guy to be beaten by a computer. He has a very nice book about that, how artificial intelligence overturned the difference between human and artificial intelligence. So please buy my book and offer me all the support. You can find all of them on Amazon. Hopefully, in the future, I'm going to write also about religion, atheism, and science. But I do have a podcast. I do have a blog called the Scientists Free from Religion. The same name of the podcast. And you can find several already publications about several topics in which talk about science, religion, and atheism. So, hope you enjoyed the show. So, let's come back to the show.
I want to walk through this slowly, because when I first read it, my eyes glazed over a bit. It felt like reading legal print. So premise 1, true moral facts are imperatives that supersede all other imperatives.
Okay, let us translate that into English. What is an imperative? It is a command. Eat your vegetables, stop at the red light, don't murder.
Okay, simple enough.
But we have millions of imperatives running through our heads all the time, and they constantly conflict. I want to sleep in versus I need to go to work. I want to eat the chocolate cake versus I want to lose weight.
I want to tell the truth versus I don't want to hurt my friend's feelings.
Exactly. Life is just a chaotic battleground of conflicting commands. Carrier argues that when we say something is a moral fact, all we are doing is identifying the ultimate winner of that battle. He calls this the identity relation.
The identity relation.
Think of it like a traffic intersection. You are driving and you have a green light. That is an imperative. Go. But suddenly you hear a siren. An ambulance is coming through the intersection against the light. That is another imperative. Stop for emergency vehicles.
The ambulance wins.
Right. The ambulance imperative supersedes the green light imperative. In that specific moment, stop is the true imperative. Go is a false imperative, or at least a lower ranked one. Premise 1 is simply a definition. A moral fact is just the label we slap on the imperative that supersedes all others. The one you really ought to do when all the cards are on the table.
So it is not some mystical glowing orb of goodness floating in space. It is just the top rank. It is the ace of spades in your hand.
Precisely. If don't lie is a moral fact, but save a life is a bigger moral fact, then when they fight, like in the classic scenario where Nazis are at your door asking about the Jewish family hidden in your attic, don't lie, stops being the moral fact. The moral fact becomes lie to save the life because it supersedes.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It is a hierarchy. That is premise 1. Now we move to premise 2.
Premise 2. For any rational agent, there are always true hypothetical imperative that supersede all others.
Whoa, whoa. Hypothetical imperative. This is where we need to pick a fight with Immanuel Kant.
We do. Kant is the giant of moral philosophy. He famously argued for the categorical imperative. He thought morality had to be unconditional. You do it because it is the rule, period. Even if you don't want to, even if it hurts you, even if the world ends, do not lie, ever.
And Carrier hates this idea.
Carrier thinks it is literal gibberish. He argues that a categorical imperative, a command with no underlying reason behind it, is logically impossible. You literally cannot have a reason to do something unless you have a goal you are trying to achieve.
Give me a real-world example of that.
Sure, you ought to buy flour. Does that sentence make sense on its own?
Only if I want to bake something.
Exactly. The ought is completely contingent on the want. If you want to bake a cake, you ought to buy flour. That is a hypothetical imperative. It is an if-then statement. Carrier argues that all imperatives are hypothetical, even the big, serious moral ones. If you want to live in a peaceful society, do not murder. If you want people to trust you, do not lie.
So he is saying that without a want, there is absolutely no ought.
Correct. And this is where the concept of the rational agent comes in. A rational agent is just an entity that has a specific want built into its very definition. It wants to be rational.
That feels a little circular to me. A thinker wants to think.
It is circular, but it is a foundational circle, like saying a triangle has 3 sides. If you are a rational being, you process information. You try to map reality accurately. You prefer true beliefs to false beliefs. You prefer effective actions over ineffective actions.
So just by waking up in the morning and not being a rock, I automatically have a goal.
Yes, you have a baseline goal. Function as a rational being. And from that one single goal, a whole tree of logic grows. If you want to function rationally, you ought to believe evidence. You ought not to contradict yourself. You ought to preserve your own existence, usually.
So premise 2 is basically saying, because I am a thinking thing, I have a built-in to-do list.
Exactly. And Carrier argues that on that to-do list, there are some items that are completely non-negotiable. Items that supersede everything else, like don't destroy your own mind or don't reason poorly.
So if premise 1 is top rank equals moral fact, and premise 2 is rational minds automatically have a top rank list,
then the conclusion logically follows. Moral facts exist for all rational minds. We don't need God to hand us the list on stone tablets. The list is generated by the basic software of our own consciousness.
Okay, I follow the logic. It is tight. But I have to say, it feels abstract.
Right.
It feels like doing math. Be rational. Don't contradict yourself. That is great if you are a Vulcan on Star Trek. But what does that have to do with, say, adultery? Or stealing? Or helping an old lady cross the street?
This is the perfect transition to Section 3 of the deep dive, because Carrier readily admits the logic is universal, but the actual application depends entirely on where you live. This introduces the distinction between necessary moral facts and contingent moral facts.
That's sci-fi section.
My absolute favorite part. A necessary moral fact is true in all possible universes. Something like do not cause unnecessary harm. That is true everywhere, because unnecessary harm is inherently illogical for any rational being to desire.
Okay, but what about contingent?
Contingent moral facts depend on the physical laws and the biology of your specific world. And to explain this, Carrier takes us to the planet of the jellyfish.
I want everyone listening to visualize this with me. A world entirely populated by intelligent, floating, gelatinous blobs. They are super smart. They build cities. They have deep philosophical discussions. But they are asexual. They reproduce by budding, literally just splitting in half. No gender, no sex.
In that world, think about our earthly moral rules regarding sexuality. Do not commit adultery, do not rape, do not display nudity in public.
It wouldn't make any sense.
They would be complete gibberish. Imagine a missionary from Earth lands there and preaches, "Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife." And the jellyfish responds, "What is a wife? And why on earth would I covet it?"
So in that specific world, adultery is wrong is not a moral fact.
Exactly. It is a false statement. But, and this is the critical part, the underlying necessary moral fact still exists. The rule, do not betray a partner's trust or do not violate bodily autonomy.
So the jellyfish might have a cultural rule like, do not split your body in your neighbor's private current.
Right. The principle is universal, don't harm. But the specific rule is contingent on the biology. Carrier calls this contextual absolutism. It is absolute, but only within the context of the physical facts.
Let us push this to the more extreme example in the paper, because this one really caught me off guard. the resurrection world.
I want you to close your eyes for a second. Imagine a world that looks exactly like ours. Same cities, same people, same coffee shops, but the laws of biology are tweaked. In this world, human bodies have a hard reset feature built in. If you are physically killed, you don't stay dead. You instantly vanish and reappear in your bed, fully healed, 20 years younger, cancer-free, and buzzing with energy.
So death is basically a cure-all. It is a highly effective medical procedure.
Exactly. Now, in our real world, if your grandmother is 95 in constant agonizing pain and can't walk, you bring her soup and you give her painkillers. That is the moral thing to do.
Right, you comfort her.
But in the resurrection world, what is the moral thing to do for Grandma?
I take a shotgun and blow her head off.
It sounds horrific to say it out loud.
It really does.
But logically, yes. In that world, shooting Grandma is the ultimate act of love. It cures her. It gives her a brand new life. If you didn't shoot her, if you just let her suffer in pain in her wheelchair when you could easily reset her, you would be a monster. You would be deeply cruel.
That is genuinely mind-bending, because the physical action, pulling the trigger, is identical. But the morality of the action flips 180 degrees just because the physics of the universe changed.
This is Carrier's physics of morality. He argues that murder is wrong isn't some magic spell written on the fabric of the cosmos. It is a derived fact. It is true in our universe because in our universe, death is permanent and death hurts. If you change the physics, you change the morality.
So bringing this back to the God debate for a second, if God exists, what is his role in all this?
Carrier argues that God is a physicist, not a moralist.
A physicist?
If God created the world, he set the sliders. He decided gravity would be 9.8 meters per second squared. He decided humans would be fragile sacks of meat that die permanently. By setting those physical parameters, he created the contingent moral facts. He made do not stab a moral rule strictly by making skin pierceable.
But could God make stabbing as good a rule in this universe, where skin is pierceable and it hurts?
No. And that is the hard limit. God cannot violate the logic. He cannot make unnecessary harm good, because that violates the very definition of a rational agent's interest. He can only change the physics so that stabbing doesn't cause harm, like in the resurrection world.
So he can change the consequences, but he can't change the underlying logic that harm is bad.
Exactly. Even God is bound by the logic of the syllogism. He can't make a square circle, and he can't make suffering is fun a rational statement.
This leads us to the part of the theory that I think will rub the most people the wrong way. We have established that morality is about rational goals. It is about getting what you want, assuming you are a rational agent. But doesn't that sound incredibly selfish?
Ah, the egoism objection. It is the elephant in the room.
Because we are raised on stories of pure altruism, the soldier jumping on the live grenade to save his squad, the mother starving herself to feed her child, we tend to think that true morality requires sacrifice. It requires ignoring what you want. But Carrier seems to be saying, no, actually, do good because it is good for you.
He is. He bites the bullet completely on this. He argues that pure altruism, doing something for no reason other than someone else's benefit with absolutely zero psychological or physical benefit to yourself, is technically impossible for a rational agent.
Impossible.
Think about it. Why do you do anything? Because you want to. Even the soldier jumping on the grenade. In that split second, he wants to save his friends more than he wants to live. That is a preference. That is a value hierarchy in his own brain. He is satisfying his own highest imperative.
So even the ultimate martyr is acting on an internal drive.
Yes. And Carrier points out the irony of religious people attacking this as selfish. Why do Christians follow the Bible?
Well, to get to heaven.
Self-interest.
Or to avoid hell.
Self-interest again.
Or because they love God and want to be close to him.
Which is the thing they want. It gives them joy. Carrier argues that you literally cannot escape egoism. You are wired for it. The only real question is, are you being stupidly selfish or smartly selfish?
Stupid selfishness versus smart selfishness. This brings us right to game theory.
The math of social interaction. This is how we logically prove that being a nice person is actually the most selfishly rational thing you can possibly do.
I want to play a game here.
Yeah.
Let us role play the prisoner's dilemma. This is the classic model Carrier uses to explain this.
Okay, let us do it. We are two entities. We interact. We can either cooperate, basically be nice, or defect, be mean, or cheat.
Okay.
If we both cooperate, we both get 3 points.
Nice.
If I defect and cheat you, and you cooperate like a sucker, I get 5 points and you get 0.
Not nice.
And if we both defect, if we both cheat each other, we both get 1 point.
So the immediate temptation is to cheat. Because if I cheat, I might hit the jackpot and get 5. If I am nice, the best I can do is 3.
Right. So, let us say you adopt the strategy of the saint. You decide you will always cooperate, no matter what I do.
I am pure goodness. I turn the other cheek.
And I adopt the strategy of the predator. I always defect.
Let's see how this plays out. Go.
Round 1, you cooperate. I defect. I take your wallet. I get 5 points. You get 0.
Okay, but I forgive you. Round 2, I cooperate.
I defect again. I punch you. I get 5 points. You get 0.
Round 3, I still turn the other cheek. I cooperate.
I defect. I steal your shoes.
Okay, I'm seeing a pattern. I am losing badly.
You are dying. In an evolutionary sense, always cooperate is a suicide pact if there are any predators in the system. The Jesus strategy completely fails in a mixed population.
Okay, so I flip it. I become Genghis Khan. My new strategy is I always defect. I attack everyone I see.
That works for a little while. You get 5 points from every sucker you meet. But eventually, you run out of suckers. Or, more likely, you meet another Genghis Khan.
Oh.
Round 1, you defect, I defect, we both get 1 point, and a black eye.
Round 2, defect, defect, 1 point.
We enter what game theorists call a death loop. We spend all our energy fighting each other. We never get the 3 points of cooperation. We stagnate and eventually die out.
So pure altruism dies. Pure selfishness stagnates. Who actually wins the game?
The computer simulations for this have been run thousands of times. The winning strategy, the one that accumulates the most points over a long timeline, is called modulated tit-for-tat.
Catchy name. How does it work?
It has 4 basic rules. Rule 1, start nice. Always assume the other person is a friend until proven otherwise. This opens the door to that sweet 3-point cooperation.
Makes sense.
Rule 2, punish defectors. If I punch you, you must punch me back immediately.
Immediate justice, no turning the cheek.
It is crucial. You have to signal to the system that cheating costs money. You have to actively lower the payoff of defection from 5 down to 1.
Okay, rule 3.
Rule 3, forgive. After you punish me, if I try to be nice again, let me. Don't hold a grudge forever. Return to cooperation so we can get back to earning 3 points.
And rule 4.
Rule 4, use targeted spite against manipulators.
Targeted spite. That sounds incredibly malicious.
It actually serves a defensive purpose.
Yeah.
If you identify someone who is constantly trying to game the system, someone who only acts nice when you are watching or tries to trick you, you stop engaging entirely, you freeze them out. You might even willingly pay a cost to hurt them just to get them out of the cooperative pool.
So spotting a bad actor is actually a moral duty.
Carrier argues yes. It is like the immune system attacking a virus. It preserves the health of the entire cooperative group.
This is fascinating because modulated tit-for-tat sounds a lot like, well, just a normal, decent human being. Hey, I'm friendly, but don't screw with me.
Exactly. Carrier's whole point is that our moral intuitions, our sense of fairness, justice, forgiveness, indignation, these are not magic feelings implanted by a deity. They are evolutionary algorithms that were selected naturally because they win the game. They maximize the score for the rational agent.
So reasonableness, compassion, and honesty, which are the big 3 virtues he lists in the paper, are literally just the best mathematical strategies for winning at life.
Yes, honesty lowers transaction costs. If I know you don't lie, I don't have to spend energy fact-checking you. We can build bridges faster.
And compassion.
Compassion builds social capital. It is essentially an insurance policy. I help you today, so you will help me tomorrow when I break my leg.
And reasonableness prevents those death loops of endless feuding.
Exactly.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But there is one specific type of person who completely breaks this model. The person who doesn't care about the points, or rather, gets points from entirely different things. The psychopath.
The ultimate outlier.
We all know the trope.
Yeah.
The CEO who destroys, lives, and sleeps like a baby.
Yeah.
The serial killer who feels zero remorse. If morality is based on what I want, and the psychopath wants to torture people, isn't he being moral by his own standard?
This is where Carrier makes a very specific, almost medical argument. He treats psychopathy not as a different moral opinion, but as a literal cognitive disability, like being colorblind.
Colorblind. Okay, walk me through that.
Imagine you are profoundly colorblind. You literally cannot see the difference between a red light and a green light. You might drive straight through an intersection, cause a crash, and say, I didn't do anything wrong, the light looked gray to me. You aren't evil in your intent, but you are factually broken. You are missing critical data about reality.
And for the psychopath, the missing data is empathy.
Right. Carrier argues that the superior joys of life, deep human connection, real love, the feeling of being genuinely trusted, the feeling of contributing to a community, these are objectively more potent and sustainable than the fleeting thrill of dominance or sadism.
So the psychopath is essentially eating cardboard and thinking it is steak because he has no taste buds.
That is a perfect analogy. He is playing a mathematically suboptimal strategy. He thinks he is winning because he has money or power, but he is trapped in a shallow, paranoid existence. He has to constantly watch his back. He has no real allies, only hostages. He is stuck in a subtle death loop of extreme isolation.
So Carrier's argument is, just because a broken person can't see the moral fact doesn't mean the fact isn't there.
Correct. The fact that a blind man can't see the sun doesn't mean the sun doesn't exist. It just means the blind man is going to bump into a lot of walls. The psychopath bumps into prisons, revenge, and lifelong isolation because he literally cannot perceive the moral facts.
This changes the way we look at evil people. They aren't possessed by demons or dark forces. They're just functionally incompetent at being rational humans.
They're bad at math, the math of survival and flourishing.
So we have built the machine now. We have the logic, which is the syllogism. We have the physics, the context, and we have the strategy, game theory. Now, what do we do with it? Section 5 of the deep dive is about practical implications.
The biggest implication is that morality is a science, which means it can actually progress. It means we can discover new moral facts, just like we discover new chemical elements or planets.
The paper mentions women's suffrage as a prime example of this.
Yes. Look at the broad scope of history. For thousands of years, the prevalent imperative was women should not vote, women should not lead.
And that wasn't just men being mean. People actually believed factually that women were incapable.
Right. They were operating on false premises. They believed things like women are too emotional, women are less biologically rational, or God ordained men to rule. These were treated as factual claims about reality.
And then over time, we checked the facts.
We ran the experiment. We looked at the data and realized, wait a minute, women are just as rational. Women are just as capable of leadership. We found out the foundational premises were empirically false. And once the eggs changed, the ought had to change with it.
So we didn't just collectively decide to be nicer to women one day. We discovered that we were objectively wrong about the nature of women.
Exactly. We were making a logical error. Carrier applies this exact same logic to homophobia. He calls it relying on primitive cult taboos.
He argues that homophobia is fundamentally based on false beliefs.
Beliefs like homosexuality destroys the fabric of society or God hates it and will punish us. But we now have data. We know that gay marriage doesn't cause earthquakes or societal collapse. We know that gay people function perfectly well in healthy, loving relationships. So the harm argument completely collapses.
And without the harm, there is no moral fact against it.
Precisely. If there is no victim, there is no crime. The ought not disappears because the why disappears.
This puts a huge burden on us, though. It means that I didn't know isn't a good enough excuse anymore.
This is my absolute favorite takeaway from the entire paper, the imperative to be rational. If moral facts are derived from true beliefs, then your first moral duty, the one that supersedes almost everything else, is to make sure your beliefs are actually true.
You have a moral duty to fact check.
You really do. You have a moral duty to learn basic logic, to spot fallacies, to rigorously question your sources. Because if you act on bad information, if you burn a witch at the stake because you truly honestly believe she is cursing the town's crops, you are doing evil. Your ignorance doesn't absolve you. Your ignorance is the crime.
That is heavy. It basically means stupidity, or at least willful stupidity, is a sin.
In Carrier's framework, yes, irrationality is the absolute root of all evil.
I want to end on what I think is the most provocative idea in the whole deep dive, the idea of judging God. We touched on it a bit at the beginning, but Carrier really lands the plane here at the end.
If objective moral facts truly exist in all possible universes,
Then they must exist in heaven too.
they exist for any rational mind, including a divine mind. This means that God cannot just make up morality on a whim. He is bound by the logic of good just as tightly as he is bound by the logic of math.
Which means we little hairless apes sitting on a rock floating in space can look at a holy book, read a command, and definitively say that is objectively immoral.
We can use the syllogism. We can say, this command to kill the Amalekite children causes unnecessary harm. It violates the best strategy of game theory. It is not what a rational agent of perfect benevolence would ever do. Therefore, it is factually wrong.
And if the book insists that God commanded it anyway?
Then you are left with two logical choices. Either the book is lying, or that specific God is not good.
That is a radical shift in power. It takes the ultimate moral authority away from the ancient text and puts it squarely into the hands of the rational mind.
It is the ultimate humanist manifesto. It essentially says, you have the hardware. You have the brain. You don't need a cosmic parent to tell you how to play nice in the sandbox. You can derive the rules of kindness, justice, and love from the very structure of your own existence.
You just have to do the math.
You just have to do the math.
So here's my challenge to you, the listener. The next time you have to make a moral choice, whether it is something small like returning a shopping cart, or something big like voting, or deciding how to treat a difficult coworker, pause for a second. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Am I just following a cultural script? Am I afraid of a cosmic punisher? Or am I actively choosing the strategy that maximizes the good simply because I'm a rational agent, and that is what rational agents do?
Morality isn't magic. It is just the science of living well together.
And maybe, just maybe, figuring that out is the most deeply spiritual thing we can actually do. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Stay rational, everyone.
Hey there, you arrived to the end of this episode. You can always check out my YouTube channel and also keep watching because there are 7 episodes. So you just if you enjoyed this one, hopefully you are going to enjoy the next one. I always like to remember that you can support my work by buying my books. Even though I still don't have a book about religion, which is the main topic of the podcast, I do have a book about artificial intelligence, and also I have a blog called Scientists Free from Religion on Medium, and there are several blog posts there, and you can enjoy it, you can read it, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, you can share it with your friends. So hopefully I can hear from you, and hope you had an amazing time. So hope to see you in the next episode.